the big takeaway from all this, if I'm Josh Jacobs, and I suspect it's not going to happen because he's too pissed off at the Raiders, but if I'm Josh Jacobs and if I'm advising him, or if I'm his father, his uncle, his cousin, his friend, his neighbor, whoever, anybody in a position to influence him, I'd be saying, hey, Josh, you should probably take that 10.1 while you can. Because you're not going to get 10.1 anywhere else this year. And I think he already knows that. I think he'd be fine with the Raiders rescinding the tender, and he would go get whatever he could wherever he could. And I think he'd be very interested in going to the Chiefs and pursuing a championship.
Yeah.
The Broncos have been interested in because he's franchise tag non-exclusive. Other teams are allowed to talk. Like his agent has an idea of who else would be interested if he suddenly becomes available. But $10.1 million isn't going to happen. If Dalvin Cook's deal is 7 with incentives, the only way you're getting close to 10.1 is with some sort of an incentive package that is triggered when you have a deal or a season like you had last year.
Right.
Like you're going to have to go out and be a superstar to get anywhere close to 10.1. So if I'm Josh Jacobs, I'm going to take the 10.1. I mean, he's upset they didn't pick up the 5th-year option. Well, if they picked up the 5th-year option, he'd be under contract this year at about 8. So he made a couple $1 million by them not picking up the 5th-year option. So I'll just take the franchise tag. Yeah, I'm upset they didn't give me a long-term deal. Yeah, I feel like they've disrespected me every step of the way. Yeah, I feel like they're not treating me like they really care about me, and they're just playing this year-to-year game, and they're going to keep me for 2 more years at the most, and then I'm going to be gone. And who's going to pay me then? Where am I going to play then? At a certain point, you just have to say, you know what? I want to play football, and they're paying me $10.1 million.
That's right.
And I better take it while I can.
Yeah, I think that's we've both been on that bandwagon here for quite some time. There's no other options. All other options hurt Josh Jacobs. That's why we want to see Josh Jacobs sign this and get it done and play. It's your best option. This is not available anywhere else, right? The Raiders need you. He knows that. But don't need you enough to where they're going to sign you to some big long-term deal. They're not going to do that. They're not. You said it earlier. It's the New England thought process. It's everything there. And so I don't imagine that happening. So please, Josh Jacobs, go in, sign that franchise tag, and get to work and put your best foot forward. And maybe you can get a 2, a 3-year, 4-year contract with somebody after the year. Maybe, like you're saying, you get franchised again and you get a little more than $10 million once again. But yeah, I don't expect it. And not even that, where, Mike, I'm with you. Like, if I was the Raiders, I'd be worried. One, I've heard rumors about, Denver and Kansas City. And, man, even the Chargers. I mean, I'd be worried about him going in the division and having that, fly back in our face in a bad way. But it does still, I'd be worried about it, but it doesn't mean you're going to give him a long-term big money contract, and that's just not going to happen.
Well, they can't now.
Yeah,
they
that's right. Of course year. Not. Duh. Yes.
Yeah,
right.
That's over.
Right.
That ended a month ago. But look, and it's funny when you put ideas out there, the people who cover the team regularly sometimes will sneer, either because they didn't think of it or they're accepting the bull crap that they're being fed by the people they cover, and they kind of have to run interference. They have to act like they believe them. Big picture, everything that I've heard about this leads me to believe that there is a very good chance as we get to the doorstep of the season, the Raiders are going to pull out that $10.1 million welcome mat, and it's going to be gone. And the fact that the Chiefs are a potential destination, the fact that the Broncos are a potential destination, the fact that the Chargers are a potential destination, that incentivizes the Raiders to wait as long as possible to remove the tender.
Yeah.
And so,
right.
It ultimately comes down to, because I think that, I don't think they applied the tender with an intent to later remove it. But this running back market is a living, breathing entity that is not breathing very well and not living very well. The market has changed, and yesterday's developments, that's the catalyst. That's the thing that the Raiders can point to when they finally do it. And maybe they're just waiting for Mark Davis to come to this conclusion on his own. Maybe Dave Ziegler, the GM, and Josh McDaniels, the head coach, have wanted to do this all along. We're just going to remove this tender. If he's upset, if he doesn't want it, fine. Fine. We'll take our $10.1 million back. Fine. We saved face by tagging him. We had to tag him. He had the big year. He's the recipient of the first ever Jim Brown Award, led the league in rushing. We can't just let him walk away. We can't do that. We have to do something here. And, I remember when I was told a few weeks back that when they finally made a long-term offer, it was couched as, we're going to make this offer so you can't say we never made you an offer. Well, how real is that, right? We need to make you an offer so we can say we made you an offer. They're playing a PR game externally and maybe internally with the owner. And now that Elliott's taking up to 6, and maybe once we see the details of the Elliott contract, that's the moment the lightning strikes for Mark Davis, and he says, why do we have $10.1 million on the books for Josh Jacobs if this is where the market is? But, we get down to that last week before the season, and there may be a moment where Josh Jacobs is thinking, this is my last chance for this 10-1. I better take it. And this is the Raiders thinking, this is our last chance to yank this 10-1. We better yank it. And because I think there's a sweet spot right before the start of the season where Jacobs better take it, and the Raiders, if they're thinking about removing it, they better remove it. And the closer it is to week 1, the harder it is for him to go somewhere else and hurt the Raiders in 2023.
Yeah, agreed. He's not as prepared. He might not be in football shape. What's he been doing in the meantime anyways? Do the other teams have that type of money and wiggle room to get him on the roster now? All of that. I mean, all those are fair points.
You got your depth chart set. Right. Your guys are ready. How do you upset the locker room by bringing him in all of a sudden?
Yeah. There's a lot that goes into that if they wait, definitely. Now, just the flip side of that is Josh Jacobs is way better than Ezekiel Elliott, right? This is the guy that led the NFL in rushing. And the flip side to that, too, where I would say, and this is where, you know me, I'm a supporter of that group out there in the Raiders. I'm a believer in Josh McDaniels and those guys that they got from New England there. So I do root for them. And I look at it and go, damn, it's a big year. And, as we've joked, they got Mr. Glass at quarterback, So where, damn, the running game is going to be could be a big deal for this football team to get them over the hump, to make them real, to make them competitive. And that's where I just wonder too, would they ever throw a little extra money, on top of the pot like the Giants did with Saquon Barkley just to get it done, to have him there this year? I would, if you're willing to pay 10.8 to franchise him, have him, and he's clearly the best running back on your roster, then, for this year, save your head coach's job, all those kind of the money you might have to pay him if it looks really horrible and you got to fire him because the fan base goes crazy. To me, it's pocket change in this kind of movement or this kind of move, and I would think about it.
First of all, I don't think Josh McDaniels is in any real trouble because I don't think Mark Davis wants to fire coaches and owe them money.
Yeah, right.
And
yeah.
I think he feels compelled to let this ride out a little bit longer.
Okay, good. That's good.
With or without Josh Jacobs, what are their prospects this year anyway? With or without him? If he shows up today, are they suddenly playoff contenders? No, they're not, because of how difficult the rest of the division is and how difficult the rest of the conference is. Like, we talk all the time about the Texans being the one team in the AFC. Well, you do, because you're the one that's going to wear the coat of shame if they end up making it. But the Texans are the one team that stands out as having no chance.
Sure.
And I'm just playing around. I agree with you on that. If there's another team least likely to make it to the playoffs, the next team would be the Raiders.
Yeah, I hear you.
Wouldn't it?
I hear you, yeah.
So what's Josh Jacobs really going to do for Josh McDaniels this year? Not much. And you mentioned the possibility of sprinkling on a little bit more like the Giants did with Saquon. That's the easy way out of this. Just offer him more money or offer him a commitment that you won't tag him next year. Give him a path to the open market if he has another big season. Don't just reward him with a 20% raise. Let him go out and get a bigger raise. Let him go out and test the market. Maybe you have to compete with other teams and you can sign him and bring him back that way. But there was a report a few weeks ago that the Raiders were open to a Saquon type package. Remember that?
Yeah, I remember
that.
That's why I was bringing it up again.
Yeah. There's now I haven't checked on this in the past week or so, but you would expect there would be some communication, some dialogue in the aftermath of that report. There was nothing. There was nothing. So I keep coming back to this idea that this is a broader PR play. This is a more calculated strategic effort to get people comfortable with the inevitable, possibly, eventual rescinding of the franchise tag. And then the columnists, the people who cover the team, they'll be able to provide cover for the team on why they did what they did. Well, we tried this, we tried this, we tried this, we tried this. It was obvious he didn't want to be here. Look at what's happened with the market. We no longer could justify this kind of money for a running back, given the dynamics of the position, yada, yada, yada. They were going to do it all along, and now they do it at a time when he can't get that money anywhere else, and it's harder for him to go somewhere else and make them look bad, regardless of where he goes, whether it's in the division, out of the division, out of the conference. If he goes somewhere and has 1,500 rushing yards, it makes them look bad. If he goes somewhere and has 500 rushing yards, they don't look so bad.
No.
And I think that's part of this. And we'd be naive to assume that games like that aren't played by organizations.
Right. Right.
Remember, these guys are all pieces, interchangeable in a giant football machine. And if you're going to remove a piece and discard it, you don't want to regret it later. You don't want to be the guy that has to live down all he does is catch touchdowns when Chris Carter gets booted out of the Eagles and becomes a Hall of Famer with another team.
That's all I'm saying.
You don't want that on your resume.
That's why I'd splash a little more money on the pot and try to make that happen. That's what I'd be worried about. Just, again, like I've said, you know, the people, for whatever reason, always seem like they want to jump on Josh McDaniels. So, you know, I just think of the worst sometimes in these scenarios. Oh, yeah, hey, the Raiders, you know, to your point, I understand. They're low in the pecking order in the AFC. They're also probably looking at it going, if our quarterback wasn't so bad in the fourth quarter of games last year, we would have been 9-8. I mean, the quarterback they had last year really had some issues late in some games where you go, they should have won that game. They were in total control. They lost. So, they got to be looking at themselves going, wait, we can be a little bit better than people realize here. And Josh Jacobs would be a huge part of that. And I would worry that, here we are, to your point, it's week 15 and he's on the Broncos. Oh, and he's got 1,300 yards rushing and the Broncos squeak in the playoffs and the Raiders don't. And it's because of Josh Jacobs. That starts the negative downturn of crap coaches and organizations have to deal with, and starts the piling on effort by everybody. That's all I'm saying. I was just throwing it out there for food for thought, and is it worth it? Is all I'm saying out there.
And they already have to worry about that with Derek Carr in New Orleans.
Exactly. Right.
I feel much better about the Saints making it to the playoffs this year than I do the Raiders, primarily because of the division and the conference that the Saints are in versus where the Raiders are. So they've already got that concern with their quarterback from last year. Now they may have that concern with their running back from last year. Who knows where this is all going to go? But Josh, we've interviewed him in the past. Remember when he was coming out of Alabama? He gave us some very candid stuff. The Alabama had lost a playoff game, and he said they weren't ready. Remember that?
Yeah.
He was very, very good.
Right.
It's been 4 years ago. Josh, we're thinking of your best interest. Go get that 10-1 while you can, because the market has changed dramatically. That 10-1, all of a sudden, is a pretty good deal. Get it while you can, because it may not be there by the time week 1 rolls around. Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.